If you took 6 women, if you line them up in a room, right, 1 out of every 5 or 6 of those women has been affected by some type of sexual violence. If you took men, 1 out of every 33, 1 out of every 32, the numbers kind of bounce back and forth. But you're talking about in your average city, every other woman, really, if you sit down and have a conversation, has been affected by some type of sexual violence.
And so when you look at those numbers, what did that mean to you for action? Because somebody could say, oh yeah, every other person has this problem, but I'm not affected by that. Why did that affect you so much?
As the scripture says, my people perish for a lack of knowledge. And what I realized was that I was doing myself, my family, and my friends and everybody I was around a disservice if I wasn't putting into action the things I was learning. The issue that I had was that we often tell women, children, and anybody who's been affected by sexual violence, if you see something, say something. If this happens, report it. Or if this, and we give all these instructions of what to do, but in that list of things, we just forget the most important part is that people should keep the hands to themselves. We never give any instructions to the predators. It's always to the prey. It's always to the animal that's being chased. We say, oh, don't get eaten, instead of, hey, maybe you shouldn't eat that person.
Hey entrepreneurs, this is Connie S and the S is for Systems. Today, I would love to welcome you to Life with Systems, where we talk about the harmony between running a business and running your life. And I have an amazing guest on today. Hey, Jeremiah.
Hey, how you doing?
Doing awesome. We're going to let Jeremiah do an amazing introduction for himself because there's such a long list of great things that you have. And then I'm going to get directly into the questions because it's time.
It's that time, yeah. So real simple, my name is Jeremiah 𝘂𝘶𝘓𝘧𝘐, 𝘂𝘊𝑇𝖀𝑒, baby, that's me. I am a advocate, I'm a husband, I'm a father, and hopefully I look to change some lives. So we get right into it. We don't go no long rundown.
We good?
They can look me up if they want to know all the backstory.
They can Google you. We'll give them the information at the end. So I think it's like, you look fly, but what you do is serious.
Yeah.
And the amount of impact you've been able to have in the time that you've been running this business and running this nonprofit, it is absolutely amazing. So we're going to start with a list of questions, but I really want you to get deep into whatever the answers are, because I know the amount of knowledge, the amount of education, the amount of time that you put into it, I do not want to rush through anything. So we're going to start off with telling us about the Teal Mobile.
Yeah, so the Hands Off Foundation is a nonprofit that I run where we help women and children who've been affected by sexual violence. Out of that was birthed the Teal Mobile. So the idea is I want to be able to bring healing, restoration, hope, positive vibes, and ultimately an introduction into self-care to people's front door. So the Teal Mobile is a 16-minute immersive experience where we provide aromatherapy, sound therapy, guided meditation, all in this 8.5 by 24-foot trailer that we've retrofitted to be a mobile wellness unit. So it's an amazing experience.
And I think it would be minimized if we didn't really talk about how we got here, because people will see the Teal Mobile and they'll be excited about it and they'll feel like, oh my God, what a great change in our community. But let's talk about the beginning. Where did this root from? Where did you come up with this concept?
Yeah, so the Teal Mobile came up almost as a joke after we just did an event out in Rockdale County, and we gave away a bunch of stuff, helped a lot of people. And I recapped with my team, as I always do. And so they were saying, well, what do we need for the next event? And somebody was saying, well, we need more marketing items. And I was like what? And so they were like, well, we should do t-shirts and we should get stress balls and bath bombs. And I was just like, nah, I wasn't feeling any of it. And so I kind of was joking. I was like, they have mobile barbershops. They got everything on wheel except for something that's going to actually benefit your mind, body, and soul. And then I slowly started laughing. And 2 days later, I went out and bought the biggest trailer I could find. And here we are.
And so for us to get one that's absolutely amazing, but when we think of the Teal Mobile and we think of the people that we're going to be serving, how did you come to want to serve that community? Let's start at the beginning. Yeah,
so about 5 years ago, I was selected to do jury duty, and I told them people I wouldn't cover. I hit the court. I said, I'm gonna be honest with you, I'm not voluntarily coming to anybody's courtroom. It's not happening. And they politely responded back and said, well, that's not how that works, good sir. If you don't show up, you'll be the next person that has a court date. And I said, okay, I was just joking. It's no need to get all serious. Y'all are entirely too tense at the courthouse. I'll be there. And so, the bailiff went through calling people's names and all these different things. And I just knew I wouldn't get selected, but ultimately, as fate would have it, I was selected to be on the jury, and it was a 12 and a 15-year-old, it was a 12 and a 15-year-old young ladies that were they were in the process of prosecuting their stepfather. And so he was accused of several sexual violence crimes that I thought, looking at the evidence, video testimony, and everything else, that he was guilty. But unfortunately, on the last day of the trial, the two young ladies got on the stand and they did something that changed my life forever. They looked him dead in the eyes and they said, "We don't know this man." And what's crazy about that is, like, for context, kind of just like so that everyone really gets a good understanding. This is an individual that was married to their mother, their biological mother. There was 9 children that lived in the home as a total. Of those 9, 3 of those children were recently created babies with the mother. So this is somebody who had been around. They lived in his house. He took them to school in his car. He's in all the family photos. So to say you don't know him was absolutely perplexing. So the judge stopped the case. He told the prosecutor to take, the clients to the back and try to figure out what's going on. Defense attorney need to, meet with his client. And ultimately, it turned into an all-out war in the courtroom. Because you had 6 folks that thought, well, either they were lying at the time that they accused their stepfather, which was about 2.5 years ago, or they're lying now on the stand. Either way it goes, that makes them a liar of sorts, and therefore we can't prosecute because we do have a doubt. Whether it's reasonable or not, there is a doubt. And then there were 6 others who felt that, based on the testimony, the evidence, and everything that was presented, that even though we could understand that there's some questions about what would prompt them to say what they said on the stand in that moment, that ultimately something did take place. And so after about 3 days of just nonstop arguing back and forth, the head person of the jury came out and said, "Your Honor, we reached a decision," and that decision was that we would have a hung jury. And so we had 6 guilty votes, 6 not guilty votes, and ultimately he walked on that day.
How did that affect you?
Oh, I went berserk. As a matter of fact, I think you were one of the first people I called. I called my fiance, who's now my wife, but I called her, and it was a string of words. I definitely strung some words together that day. Mostly I was angry because the issue that I had was that we often tell women, children, and anybody who's been affected by sexual violence, if you see something, say something. If this happens, report it. Or if this, and we give all these instructions of what to do, but in that list of things, we just forget the most important part is that people should keep the hands to themselves. We never give any instructions to the predators. It's always to the prey. It's always to the animal that's being chased. We say, "Oh, don't get eaten," instead of, "Hey, maybe you shouldn't eat that person." And so it was, most of it was anger. And then after the anger passed, it was a lot of disappointment because I felt like, these were children, and we did not do them a service on that day, because ultimately, what was subsequently happening that I know now, I didn't know this at the time, but what I know now is that most individuals who've been affected by some type of sexual violence they get violated again, typically 2 to 3 times within their lifetime. So, and both of these individuals were going to go to the military after they graduated high school. And so, as much as we love our servicemen and women, the reality is that most women that go to the military are sexually violated at a higher clip. So these are 2 women that had already been sexually violated going to the military, which has a history of sexually violating women, and they didn't get justice the first time. So you can imagine that the second time or third go around, we hope that doesn't happen, but the data just shows otherwise. So
in that moment, I know the anger was there. I know the frustration. And when did you make a decision that you needed to do something? Because, correct me if I'm wrong, you don't have a history of any of this at all. You've never have done the research, never cared about the data, not even that you cared about, but that wasn't something that was on your radar. What was the trigger to say, no, I am responsible for this, I have to do this?
Yeah, I think that it was probably within the week. So after talking to my fiance, and it was probably about 2 or 3 days, I was just really in a bad mood. Like, I was just irritated. Like, everything bothered me. I was just snapping on people. I was really irritated because I just felt that we didn't get the job done. And so she kind of said something to me. She said, "Well, what do you want to do about it?" And it wasn't in being in a malicious way. It was just like, the case is over. My background was in sales. I worked as in telecommunication sales. I was far away from the nonprofit space. I had nothing to do with it, and I didn't look at anything in the realm of sexual violence. So, but it was probably within that week. I said, "Okay, I got to do something. I don't know what it is, but I got to do something."
And I know I talked to you, and you was upset.
Yeah.
And you wanted to do something. I love this story, Jeremiah, and I've been waiting to tell this part of the story.
Yeah.
Because your journey has been beautiful and long and hard. But where did you first start? What was your first decision that you wanted to do?
Started. So it's hilarious now. You hurt my little feelings back then, but
it was in love.
It was. So when we talk about systems, we talk about just how you run your business. I sat down and I said, okay, well, what am I good at, right? I know I can sell. I know I've got the gift of gab. And I think I'm pretty fashionable. I think I pull it together when it needs to be pulled together. I do what I do. So I said, I'm gonna design something. And so we designed a beautiful purse. I'm gonna gas this purse because you even play about
I'm
this
not
bag.
playing you about the purse. It was nice.
We designed this high-end luxury bag. I reached out to some of the top manufacturers. I spent like a month and a half designing this. Like I put a lot of time and energy and resources into it. And we designed a bag that was supposed to be a self-defense person. So it was going to have all these different things. It was going to have pepper spray and it was going to have brass knuckles when you pull out the handles and all this kind of, all this different stuff. And that's where we started. And I think I got the first prototype and I sent it to you and I was like, look at this, I'm about to change the world. And you were like, you're wasting your time.
In love. And so where did the journey, because I know it took some time. We're talking about 5 years worth of time to go from a first prototype to having an actual mobile vehicle where you can help and serve.
Yeah.
Where did you decide, like, no, I have to serve in a different way?
Yeah, so what really happened was, after talking to you, honestly, you challenged me to become an expert in the thing that I wanted to serve in. And I realized that I really didn't know anything about sexual violence. I knew that obviously violating someone's consent is wrong, but I didn't really know anything. I didn't even understand what happened at the court case I was in. I just knew that it didn't make sense to say that someone you live with, someone who's providing a lifestyle for you, all these different things, for you to say that you don't know them, it was just crazy. It's almost if I sat here and said, I don't know Connie.
Right.
Like I've seen you plenty of times, we've talked plenty of times, it was just odd. But it was in that conversation, I said, okay, cool, I'm gonna go learn. And so I spent the first year and a half, I became a certified sexual assault advocate. Then I became a life coach. Then I went and got certified in first aid and CPR so that I could understand how to serve and I could work with people that needed to be served, because my background was in sales and in business. And so in sales, oftentimes you're taught to go for the kill, right? We make all these references of being a lion versus being whatever. And so the way my mind was wired, it wasn't to come in and serve, like to restore. It was to just hit a goal and keep moving. Mm-hmm. And so that's when I made that decision. That
makes me so happy. And I think people, when you talk about doing research, right? You say, hey, I want to learn how to do this. I want to be really great at this. You went crazy on research. So if you could just give us some stats on sexual assault, so that way they understand what it looks like to really, really delve into understanding your market.
Yeah, so the statistic goes is 1 out of every 5 women. Some people say 1 out of every 6, but the stat goes is 28 million women a year. So if you were to break that down in Georgia, you're talking about give or take 833,000 or so. In the state of Georgia, because Georgia they bounce between 1 and 2 for sex trafficking. So we're the highest market for it. So that means if you took 6 women, if you line them up in a room, right, 1 out of every 5 or 6 of those women has been affected by some type of sexual violence. If you took men, 1 out of every 33, 1 out of every 32, the numbers kind of bounce back and forth. But you're talking about in your average city, every other woman, really, if you sit down and have a conversation, has been affected by some type of sexual violence.
And so when you look at those numbers, what did that mean to you for action? Because somebody could say, oh yeah, every other person has this problem, but I'm not affected by that. Why did that affect you so much?
Yeah, so it just made me realize that it was a bigger problem than just that court case. While the court case definitely frustrated me, what I realized is that every day, especially in sales, because a lot of times in the telecommunication space, women were the ones who were coming in the store oftentimes, whether they were getting the phones for themselves or getting it for other people. So I just realized that when people were coming in and we think, oh, she's just having a terrible day or she's got a bad attitude, I realized that more times than not, there's some type of trauma that has taken place and it's being minimized. And oftentimes people are being re-traumatized because of what we don't know. And as the scripture says, my people perish for a lack of knowledge. And what I realized was that I was doing myself, my family and my friends and everybody I was around a disservice if I wasn't putting into action the things I was learning.
And so I think a note that's very important is the amount of sacrifice, because when we're starting a business, when it's a different level of purpose, it's a different level of sacrifice that comes along with that. What did sacrifice look like for you in building this business?
Oh, sacrifice is crazy. It's not what I thought it would have been. We could talk about the obvious stuff, money, right? I've put a lot of money into the organization. We could talk about resources, done a lot of that. But I think what people don't understand most is the emotional sacrifice. There are nights sometimes where I can't do nothing but cry. It's not because I'm sad. It's not because I haven't processed what I do. It's just, it's at times it seems the amount of work that I put in is only a little drop in a big bucket. And so I think that when you're talking about starting a business and you're really looking to serve people on a high level, understanding that what you sacrifice at times is going to be your emotional well-being. It's going to be times with your family, because there are some weekends my kids just not going to see me because I got to go set up this tent. I've got to go do this training. I've got to be wherever I've got to be, or even just the ability to be present. I started this by saying I'm a husband, father. Sometimes I'm just staring into space. My wife's like, "What's going on?" Nothing's wrong. I'm just thinking about all the different things that have to be done in order for us to really be successful and to generate the kind of impact that we looked at to generate.
And I think when we think of business, we don't realize how much it impacts our personal life, how much it impacts your relationships, your children, the time you spend with your family. That's a huge sacrifice. And I know you guys have moved, and the amount of belief that your wife had to have in you to say, hey, I know you don't even know anything about sexual assault. This hasn't been a conversation between us. But for her to follow you, how important was that, the support from your wife during this journey?
Listen, the support has been next level because, for context, I was living in Cobb County at the time when all this took place. And I said, look, when I propose, we're going to move to Rockdale County. We're going to move out to Conyers. And I didn't have anybody out there. We're going to move our whole life out here because I think this is the place the foundation needs to be. And so it's been a giant weight lifted off my shoulders because there's so many other things that have to be taken care of. The last thing I want to have to worry about when I come home is now also having to fight you when I've been also fighting against the world all day. So I think that that support is something that you can't even quantify because Lord knows she's been there all the sleepless nights, the 24 hours, 48-hour turnarounds. Because what people don't realize is when you're passionate about something, you all in on it. So, when I say I put everything into it, everything. Sleepless nights, empty bank accounts, the whole nine. We've been going crazy with this.
I commend you for that. And I know I've watched the journey with you, and I know how much of a toll it's taken emotionally because it's hard to hear these stories. Yeah. How do you process internally the stories that you hear when it comes to sexual assault victims? Because it's one thing to say, oh yeah, I believe in that. I believe you. I think that's awful. It's another thing to be the person that they're running to with their problems, with their bag in hand, to say, I need to be inside this truck. I need to be in there because I need somewhere safe to be. How has that affected you emotionally? Yeah. So one of the things I had to do, I actually got a therapist myself because I realized that. So here's the thing. So many people, pour from a glass that's been empty. We talk about looking at the glass half full. Most people are running on empty. There's nothing in the glass. And so they're taking this empty glass and they're clanking against other people's empty glasses and then wondering why everybody's thirsty. And so you have to take that opportunity to refill your own cup. I didn't realize how much animosity and anger and borderline depression that I had to work through on my own, just from life in general. And then this new thing that I've taken on, and what does it mean to be effective in this space? Or how do I process the microaggressions that I wasn't expecting to get, right? Because if we call a spade, I'm a black man with multicolored locks going into a space that for all intents and purposes is dominated by older white women. You don't find too many executive directors who are African-American or black or however you want to quantify yourself. We'll say melanin, right? You don't find that many. And then when you do find them, they're not that many in this space. And then not only was I taking on a space where it wasn't a lot of me in it, I was not taking an organization that had been around for 20 or 30 years. I was starting an entire new organization with new concepts,
new processes, and for all intents and purposes coming in and saying, we're going to kick the door down because I don't like how y'all been operating. I feel like we can be much more effective at it if we go about this a different way.
How did that work out? Because at this point, you have a lot of community support. You have a lot of community support. So how did you transition from, you're coming in to kick our door flat, to, we love you, Jeremiah, you're the best thing ever? How did that happen?
I had to go through a process. And again, like, it's amazing when we think about how much of this journey you've been there for. But I had to go through a process where I was just cool with being Jeremiah. And I thought that I was always confident in just who I was. I've never really been much of a, I'm gonna do what I do regardless. Anybody that knows me knows that. But it was a switch that had to flip to where not only am I gonna do what I do, but it's bigger than me. You don't have to like me. That's okay. We don't ever have to be friends. But what we not finna do is play in Survivor Space. We not finna do that. Friendship or not, partnership or not, fam, I'll do this by myself. But what we not finna do is play in Survivor Space. And when I got to that point, you only have two options, really. You can either like me and love me, or you don't, and you're going to get out the way. But them the options. And I think that people recognize that realness. It's not just a role. It's not just a position. It's not just a job. This is really my life. Like, I'm all in on it. So, I don't know.
and to be all in, I know it's taken a lot. And so now you've built these relationships. Now you've been able to build a safe space. I know the bigger goal is something even bigger than that.
Yeah.
Tell me about some of the relationships that you've gained now, especially with having all the certifications that you have. Tell me about some of the connections that you've made through this process.
Yeah, so we've been able to have some amazing community partnerships. So we've partnered with Walmart in the past to do some community givebacks. We partnered with Target. Most recently, currently, we are in an active partnership with Soul Asylum Acoustic Designs. They are a design firm in Atlanta that is helping us build out this Teal Mobile. And so just being able to take industries and merge them is where I feel that my sweet spot is, because a lot of people will say, well, what is audio engineering? What is car development? What does all these different things have to do with what you're doing? Not realizing that people are people and they're affected in every industry. And so just because we're a nonprofit doesn't mean I have to only stick with nonprofits and only work with nonprofits. Now, we work with everybody. If you see the goal, you see the vision, and you see the mission, then we get to work. And so we've been able to do some really cool partnerships. We've partnered with, let me not forget, Amera Group. Amera Group's been amazing. We've done some stuff with 𝗵𝗵𝗹𝗵, i.e. Handy, which has been amazing. So, it's just about sticking our head out there and saying, hey, this is what we're looking to do. If you like it, adieu to you. If not, then, hey, we move on. But it's been great. We've been able to do some stuff.
What do you think has been the factor for you? When you walk in the door, people will listen. They'll hear you. No matter what they're doing, they're going to stop. And who is this dude in here with these teal locks?
Yeah.
What do you think about you makes people listen as a man, as a black man who has not been a part of the sexual assault community?
Yeah.
Why are they listening to you? What do you believe that is?
I think it's nothing short of my authenticity. There's a purity that comes from the work that I'm doing. And it's not because I just want to toot my own horn. It is genuinely because I saw a problem and I really can't sleep at night over it. Like, it really bothers me on a very deep level. It's one of those things where I don't want to slight other people, because I think people are passionate about the things they do, or whatever the case may be. That's fine. But for me, this was a space I didn't have to be in. I could have made a donation to another organization that was doing some work, gave a couple of items here and there, did a couple of volunteer services, opportunities, and that been that. But the way that it affected me, I couldn't, as a man, I feel like I couldn't go home and look at my fiance, now wife, and be like, yeah, I did all I could do. That just wasn't sitting right with me. And it bothered me at how some of the men on the panel, because it bothered me so much how some of the jurors justified and mansplained how things could have been misconstrued. And to me, I feel like you don't leave an opportunity for any misconstruedness. You don't leave an opportunity for there to be a gray area. Either there was consent or there wasn't. All this back and forth that people do, either you're a predator or you're not, bro. Like, it's not a lot of in between. I don't know where all this, well, maybe hypothetically, like, this isn't a thesis exercise for some document that you're writing for college. This is people's real lives. And I think that's what people feel, is that this is not just a matter of, oh, we want to do something cool and hopefully we change some lives. No, we want to change lives. And if it happens to be cool, great.
I love that. You're just so awesome. Makes me so happy. So now looking back from where you are 5 years later,
Yeah.
when you think of that case and you think of why the girls got on that stand and they said what they said, and they said, we don't know him, we don't recognize him, we haven't seen him. Why now, after all the education that you have, why do you think that they said that?
Yeah. Woo. Now, Connie, you know I'm hard to the core. You're gonna make me fall apart of it. So there's a couple of things, right? So survivors of sexual violence experience re-victimization. And so what re-victimization is, it's a big, long, fancy word, but all it basically says is that when you've gone through a traumatic event, there are things that are triggers that make you re-experience that event. And so they call it re-victimization. And so what I believe happened is that, one, they were just tired. And I think so many people in the listening audience can relate to that, right? Just being tired. They didn't want to fight anymore. You have to understand that by the time this court case got to court and we were actually sitting in the courtroom, 2 years had passed. In that 2-year period, they went from being A/B students to barely passing their classes. They went from having a home to live in to being homeless 3 times. They went from being, the proverbial cool kids to being somewhat ostracized because the police came and picked them up out of the courtroom. And so, you know how children are, rumors started and all these different things. So I think that they were just tired. I think that they were tired of telling the story. I think they were tired of fighting. And they said something in the court case that was very impactful. They just said, I wish things could just go back to how they were. And a lot of times when you're talking about folks who've experienced some level of trauma, whether it's sexual violence or any other types of trauma, the devil you know sometimes is better than the devil you don't, or at least that's how we process it. And so in their minds, at least when he was here, yeah, he may have been a predator. And we'll say allegedly since he was acquitted, however. Yeah, he may have been a predator, but at least we had a place to stay. Yeah, he may have been a predator, but at least I didn't have to walk to school because I didn't have a car to ride in. Yeah, he may have been a predator, but we didn't miss a meal. And so when you say, well, what do I think happened? I think they were just tired. That's the best way to say it. They were just tired of fighting, tired of struggling, and the amount of stress that had to be in the household because the mother was working 16-hour days. They had 9 children that lived in the household total. So, I have 3, and every month I'm looking at the expenses like, so I could imagine with 9, and she was working at a warehouse. I won't say which warehouse because they ain't really had nothing to do with this, but she was working at a warehouse. And so let's just assume you're making $15 an hour working at a warehouse. You work 10 hours a day. It's $150 a day. You work 5 days a week, right? We'll call it 200 for easy math. That's $1,000 a week. That means we'll say before taxes, roughly, we'll give it $3,000 a month. You had 9 children to take care of. The math doesn't math. And this was, you give or take for inflation and everything else. They were tired, just ready to be done. They were the oldest daughter was about to graduate. And so in her mind, she actually said on the stand, I'm about to graduate and then I'll be going to the military. And so I won't even be in the house. And so it's a matter of, if we could just wrap this up, I'll just get out the way because clearly I'm the problem, is what she really said on that stand.
Whew.
Yeah.
And that's why I always ask how are you feeling? How are you doing? Because when you're serving like that in a space where people are, that they're traumatized. It's one thing to say, I work with business owners, and they probably have some personal problems too. But this is real life. This is the entire purpose of talking about life with systems, because there is a way to be able to report things privately. There are ways to be able to tell, which is the way that back in my day, you were just telling on somebody. And many times the predators are somebody that you know. Do you know the stats on how often it is that it's someone that you know versus a stranger on the street? Yeah,
it's roughly 43%, 44%. So on average, most times it's someone they say you like or know, but oftentimes it's a family member, a friend, or someone that you are in close quarters with. Because what people don't understand is sexual violence is not about sex itself. In 2024, you can get sex anywhere. It's online, it's in person, it's everywhere. You can get that anywhere. It's oftentimes about power, control, coercion. And so the way that you get those things is by first masking yourself as a friend. You have to gain trust first. And so once they gain that trust, then they're able to violate, because it's no longer just uncle or auntie so-and-so touched me inappropriately. It's like, well, this is said family member that you watched me grow up. You raised me. This isn't just cousin so-and-so. Because sometimes it's a little different when it's somebody you don't know, because you have no direct tie to them. But when it is somebody that you have an emotional connection with, it makes it 10 times harder. And that's what they're banking on. That's what most predators are banking on, is that you won't say anything or do anything because of the relationship that we have.
That is just absolutely awful. And it's a blessing what you're doing, because I know it's hard for you. I know it's hard at home. Just coming home with that type of energy and emotion and story sitting on your back. And I know the trouble that you've had with sleeping. I know what that looks like for you. So I just commend you so much for the hard work that you're doing, especially as a Black man. Because a lot of times we don't feel heard, or you're scared to tell, or you're afraid that, people are going to talk about you, they're going to laugh, or they're not going to believe you, which I think is the hardest part, is to tell somebody this happened to me and then be like, what were you wearing? Right. Well, what did you do? Oh, so you got all the way over there, and then all of a sudden you said, no, that's your fault because you weren't supposed to go over there. But like you said, many times you don't know that they're a predator until you get put in that kind of position. Yeah. The amount of women that you've talked to over this time, is there anything that you wish that you could share to those that are in the survivor space but may not have ever came forward or may not have ever told anybody and still feel the shame? Is there any message that you would have to those young ladies and men? Because people think the men don't get sexually assaulted, but they do. Right. And then they grow up with the same type of trauma that the women do. It just comes out a different way. They may become hypersexual. What are some of the things that you see when it comes to men that have been sexually assaulted? Yeah. So with men, a lot of times it's a complete personality change. So if they're very outgoing, they may become very introverted, because there's a level of shame that they feel. Or it causes confusion in what they believe their role is in society as a man. For some men, it hinders them unable to perform sexually, whether that's with men or women or whoever. The challenge that comes up is that because it's not talked about, you live with this silent weight. And with that weight that you live with, it now makes every function of your life difficult, because everything that the best way to say it is that it's people talk about, have you ever lived with drunk goggles? So they put these drunk goggles on you so you can see what it's like if you were drunk. Mm-hmm. It's the same way. When you have this unresolved trauma, it's like walking around with these goggles on, because everything you see, feel, and experience has a tint over it, because you're looking at it through the lens of trauma. Mm. And so something as simple as somebody bumping into you in the supermarket, because you've been taken advantage of before, now your response is so grandiose that, a simple bump turns into, now I need to fight you in the middle of the store, because you felt that you were taken advantage of previously. And so now you vowed to yourself, I'll never be taken advantage of again. And so everything now is amplified. So what message would you have for those that have been assaulted and are feeling shamed or nervous or not confident to come forward and say anything? What advice would you give, and where would you tell them to go? Yeah, so I think the first piece of advice I would say is understand that you are valuable. You are not damaged goods. Your life has value. It is meaningful. You deserve everything that you work for in this world. Nothing should be taken from you. And those who have taken from you are at fault, not you. I'll say it again. Those who have taken from you are at fault, not you. So if you find yourself in an environment or a scenario where your consent has been violated, don't think less of yourself. I'll put it in another context for you, and I think that you'll appreciate this. If you owned a supermarket and someone came in and stole all the Oreos out the supermarket, nobody would say, well, man, you should have had better cameras. You should have had better locks. They would say, no, shame on that thief for coming in and stealing all them Oreos you worked hard to stock your store with. Well, think of your life, think of your soul, think of your mind, think of it as those Oreos. You were just in the store minding your business, and the thief is the one that is at fault. So if you have experienced some type of sexual violence, or if something doesn't sit right with you, I would say, if you're not sure, talk to a trusted advisor, whether that may be law enforcement, whether that may be a sexual assault advocate such as myself, a counselor, a therapist, but talk to someone, if nothing else, but to just vocalize your experience. Because forgiveness is not for the other person, it's for you. Forgiving yourself, not because of what happened to you, but for allowing that weight to hold you down. Forgiveness is for you, it's not for them. Oh, child, where were you when I was young? So how can people donate?
Yeah, so the easiest way, if you want to support the mission and the cause and what we're doing, which we're doing some amazing things, is to go to www.handsofffoundation.org. So that should be 3 F's in a row, handsofffoundation.org. And so we are a full 501c3 nonprofit. Some of the things that we've done in the last year, we've given over 150 self-care and wellness packages out. We've done consent education courses. We've certified 3 different individuals in our consent education course. We speak at schools. We speak at churches. We speak anywhere somebody give us a microphone and listen. And most importantly, in about 2 to 3 weeks, we'll be rolling out with the Teal Mobile, which I'm super excited about that because we'll be able to go wherever we're booked. This is Wellness on Wheels, and we'll be able to pull up and provide this immersive experience so that you can, for just a moment, see what it will feel like if you didn't have to live as a survivor, but live as someone who's thriving.
Oh. Jeremiah, first of all, I'm just so proud of you. I know this journey has been a lot. And I'm not going to cry because I'm a gangster.
Hey, me too.
But I do appreciate you coming on here. I was very intentional about you being my first guest.
Thank you.
The thing that you said from the beginning, 5 years ago, you said, I will be your biggest and best testimony. And you have been.
Yeah.
The amount of impact that you have in the community is so great. And I'm very, very proud of you.
Thank you so much.
Woo, child. You good?
I am. I just want to say one thing about that.
Yes.
I've been very intentional about making sure that I didn't drop the ball again. So I personally felt responsible in that court case, even though I didn't do anything to anybody. All I did was show up for a summons. But I truly felt that we did a disservice that day. And I said I would never let it happen again. And so for people like yourself to believe in me, now here I go. You done got all emotional, now I'm emotional. When people believe in what we're doing, I take that as a personal charge. I think we all have a space in between when we're born and when we leave. And we got to do something with it. And so for me, I got to make the most of it. And if I feel like if I go today, if I hadn't put in the work and I'm not comfortable where I'm at, then we can keep working. We keep going harder. We can sleep when we dead. I ain't worried about no sleep right now. We getting it.
Jeremiah, I want to thank you. We're going to make sure we have all your information. Tear didn't drop. It didn't drop. Hold on. It's hanging in there.
Hang on to it.
Is it holding? Look, I know. I wish I could just suck it back up. But I'm so proud of the work that you're doing and that you're going to continue to do. And I hope that from this, you're able to grow into the space that I know that you're looking to grow into. Yeah. And this is just step one. I'm proud of you.
Thank you so much, Connie. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank everybody for watching and tuning in. This is Life with Systems with your host, Connie S. Falls and the S for Systems. I love y'all. Bye.